Hello, Una from Oz here. It's winter down under and the weather is pretty appalling today. It's very windy, very rainy and very cold. So a great day to spend in the studio. Today I'm going to talk about backgrounds, simple backgrounds to get you started in your art journaling to help you break the blank page. If you hear weird noises, it's my animals. My rooster's outside deciding to crow and I have a dog who's trying to sit on my lap. Anyway, we'll get started. So I'm starting with 5 simple backgrounds that anybody can do. You don't need any particular or special materials for this. Most of it is very generally available. And if you haven't got exactly what I'm using, you can substitute with anything you like. So we're going to go through a simple torn paper collage, using ink sprays, paint smooshing, yes, that is a term and we do use it, ink blending and paint scraping. 5 simple backgrounds to get you started to help you break your blank page. So first of all, we're going to go with torn paper collage. So torn paper collage is exactly what it says. It's just torn up bits of paper stuck on. I have used some brown paper which I have been received in packaging. It comes like this. It's pre-perforated. It's a bit longer. It's quite nice. It's usually a little wrinkly because it's been squashed up in the parcel. I have quite a lot of this that I receive in parcels and I keep it all. I smooth it out and put it away because I quite like it for gift wrapping, vintage work, and of course it's not too thick. It's great paper. Another one I'm using today, to keeping it simple, is just some music paper. I didn't have a lot of music paper and a very, very kind lady from America sent me some. So I was quite shocked about that. I have searched the op shops, thrift stores high and low and still haven't managed to find much. But I also had a friend who gave me a big stash, so I was really happy with that. So I've quickly torn up some paper. Now, if you're wondering what this is, yes, it's a hacksaw blade. Yep, took it out of the hacksaw, but it actually rips up paper really nicely. You get a straight edge. It's not perfectly smooth like a scissor cut, but you get a slightly serrated, wrinkly edge, and I really quite like it. Easy to use, quite long, quite simple, and yes, you do have to be a little bit careful because you really don't want to cut yourself. So another one you need is a matte medium or a glue. You can use any sort of a craft glue. If it's a little thick, put some in addition, add a bit of water to water it down. Good old PVA glue works well, but again, if it's a bit thick, you might just need to water it down. And of course, paintbrush. Really easy to do and a really good one to get you started if you just want to break a blank page. Now, another thing you can do with your collage paper is you can use anything. You can use wrapping paper, you can use tissue paper, you can use paper out of magazines. I only recommend that you don't use anything that's too cardboardy because it can be quite hard to stick down. Now, gluing it down, you just basically get a piece, stick it down. Be generous with the glue, but do not, you don't want globs hanging about. I also always glue over the top. It helps stick it down. It also helps seal it. So if you want to stamp or if you want to put paint or anything over the top, you don't have to worry about it bleeding through. It helps seal the paper and it helps stick it down as well. So as you can see, it's extremely technical. I'm just using bits of ripped up paper to stick down. The only downside with this is you do need to wait for it to dry before you can continue. For me, that's not a huge issue because I generally, if I'm doing backgrounds and I'm getting in the mode, I might do 4 or 5 backgrounds at once on different pages in different journals, and I just set them aside to dry. So it's not always an issue if I have to wait for things to dry. You can dry it with a heat gun, or if you don't have that, you can put it in a warm room, but I highly recommend that you make sure it is very dry before you continue. You can see I'm being quite generous with the glue. I'm using my small Ranger art journal. It's a slimline one, so you can use it either vertically or you can use it horizontally. I have done a few pages in it. You can also tear your paper by hand. I find this craft paper tends to tear quite nicely. Some papers tear evenly and some don't. I also try not to make everything too evenly lined up. I do like to overlap my bits of paper. And I'm trying, because it's a smaller journal, I'm not I'm not using large pieces of paper. Now you can use large pieces of paper if you wish to. It's completely up to you. But because it's a smaller journal, I'm not looking for extremely large pieces of paper. I'm trying to vary the sizes and placement. I don't think about it too much. I'm more interested in just getting it down. You don't have to, I've done quite a linear look. You don't have to do that. You can put them on any sort of an angle. I'm also not, also don't want my images all the same way up. I'm varying them, so some are sideways, some are up the right way. You could also use little swatches of fabric. I find some of the really pretty patchworking fabric looks really good collaged down, again using a lot of glue. Need some more of this one. So very easy to use the hacksaw blade. Line it up, rip it off. What I do at the end, once I've pretty much got it covered, I then start just ripping little pieces up to fill in the gaps. You don't have to cover the whole page, it's completely up to you. I generally cover the whole page, depends what I'm doing, what papers I've got, what mood I'm in. Sometimes I want to leave bits of plain paper in between, particularly if I'm going to use paints or anything. Sometimes it's nice to have a different effect with the paper. I'm pretty sure I've got that fully covered. You can see the first bit that I stuck down is already starting to dry. That's not even sticky. I do have the heater going though because it's so cold. So there's our first very simple stick it down collage. Only took a few minutes. Rip it up, stick it down, make sure you don't have globs of glue, and then either dry with a heat gun or set it aside to dry and use it later. I'll do another one in a minute. See you later. Back again for number 2 of our simple backgrounds to get you started is ink spraying. Now you can use any kind of ink. It can be a shimmer ink, it can be a distress ink, or a dilutions ink. There's so many brands of ink to spray. So just use whatever you've got. Now if you haven't even got a spray ink, you can make your own, and I do this by using the Re-Inker ink for a ink pad, and I put a few drops in a small spray bottle and give it a mix, and bingo, you've got a ink spray. Really easy. I'm today using some of my favourite spray inks, which are the Distress Oxide sprays. This is a slightly new one, Salvage Patina, which is particularly beautiful. And I'm also using Vintage Photo. So here is the one I did earlier. As you can see, it's nearly dry. I'm just covering it up so I don't get ink everywhere. I'm sort of keeping the same theme. I'm using Vintage Photo and I'm using Salvage Patina. Now when you get these, because they are a dye and a pigment, the pigment will settle. So you need to give them a really good shake. And the best way to shake them is like a little tinkle bell side to side. If you shake them up and down, you can actually force the sediment into the spray tube, and thus you won't be able to get it out as easier, and it may even block. And also, after I've finished spraying with these, to keep the nozzles clean, I tend to run them under the tap, or even just use a damp cloth and wipe any sediment away from the where the spray comes out, just so the pigment doesn't dry and block the nozzle. So another really simple one. I'm also going to use a little water in combination with some paper towel to get a little effect, which is really handy. So again, I have spent ages shaking my inks, so I'm ready to go. So we're just going to spray it. I have put some paper towel down because it does tend to go everywhere. So as you can see, I'm not doing complete full sprays, as that is, I'm not pushing the plunger right down. It's making a nice little motley effect. This one's a lot harder to spray. Now if you get ink where you don't particularly want it, you can just blot it up a little bit. So I'm just using my roll of paper towel, blotting slightly to get rid of any really big chunky bits. That's not a bad effect. It's a little motley, it's quite nice. I can see parts of it are already soaking in. Because the oxide spray is a dye as well as a pigment, the dye will run a little bit. So you do get a little bit of blending and running. I don't mind that. I think that's why I really like these. You also, it dries in a matte sort of chalky look. Another reason why I really like them. And you can also layer your colours up, and the colours generally won't blend together. Unlike other water-based inks, once you put one ink over the other, they react and you end up with everything blending up. So if you're starting out, stick to 2 or 3 colours. Because this is a small page, I've only gone for 2 colours. Now I'm going to add a little water to get a little motley effect. I can see that parts of it are still a bit wet and parts of it have dried. I think the motley effect is quite nice. It really appeals to me. If I wanted to blend these out, I could actually add a lot of water while it was still wet and all this would be covered, but I don't mind that look. So I'm just going to very gently squeeze my spray bottle because I want some bigger splotches of water. I don't want a fine spray. I'm going to let it sit for 30 seconds or so. I actually keep all these bits because I stick them in my art journal as backgrounds. And once that is sitting, I'm just going to roll it off once. And you can see that it's lifted some of the pigment and it's actually made a nice splotchy effect. I like a little bit more blue on that, only because I really like this colour. So it's not quite dry, but as you can see, this one's much easier to get a small bit out of than the other one. So I think that's going to look quite nice. I'm going to leave that sit for a minute or so, and then I'm probably going to just, might use this bit here, I'm just going to mop up the real excess. It also helps give it a slightly more mottled look, which I quite like. So within seconds we've pretty much made a really nice mottly sprayed background. Now if you are not using, or you don't have Distress Oxide sprays, it won't look exactly like this, but you will get some sort of effect. Just be aware that if you are using two colours, water-based, ink-based, they can blend. So make sure you choose two colours that are going to be appropriate together. You don't want opposite colours on the colour wheel like red and green, because you'll get a lovely shade of brown, or mud as we call it. Same with things like blue and orange and yellow and purple. Now you can use those together, but you probably need to spray one, let it dry, and then spray the other, and try not to overlap them too much. Anyway, simple, another background. Nice looking. It's a little bit shiny because it's wet. Once it dries, it will be matte and oxidey, and I really like this effect. It's sort of a little bit of rusty patina look, and I really like it. So again, another simple, easy background. That one was very quick. And again, if you want it to dry, to move on, hit it with your heat gun, and it'll be ready to go. Okay, see you for the next one. Here we go again with our third background. Now I did have it listed as paint smooshing, but you do need to use quite a watery paint, and your any water-based ink pad will work just as well. Again, I'm using some of my favourites, the Ranger Distress Oxides, a little bit of water, and you need a piece of acetate or plastic. Now if you don't have that, you can use any piece of plastic. I like it a little bit flexible. You can use a lid off something. You could use an acrylic block that you stick your stamps to. So anything that you can press the ink pad into. And now if you're using paint, like I said, you need to make sure your paint is really watery, because you want that sploshy effect. So I'm going to start, I've just chosen 3 colours, and you need a little water, and it's quite simple. With these Distress Oxides, like the sprays, you can layer them over each other. You will get some sort of blending. I've chosen 3 colours that work quite well together. So very simple, press it onto the sheet of acetate, give it a little spritz of water, and basically slop it about. If you need more, just press again. Another little drop of water. Move it about. So you can see you get a nice splattery effect. Really simple. Don't think about it too much. I do advise that you give your acetate or plastic a little white over to get when you change colours, only so you do not get contamination on the next colour pad. You can see you can get big blobs and little blobs. One thing good about the bending of the acetate is you can control to some degree where your colours are going. I've got a pretty good coverage there. Some of it is starting to soak in and dry, and I'm going to give it one last hit of the Right Persimmon, which is a very lovely orangey colour. I'm actually going to try and be a little bit more splotchy with this. I do want to get a little more coverage on my paper, so I'm aiming for the bits that are not done. So bright and cheerful, really simple smooshing. You do have a little control with your water and your placement, but it's made a really bright, vibrant page. It won't take long to dry. Because it's an oxide, it will dry a little bit chalky. You can fill in all the gaps. You could use a paintbrush and push it around. I'm not too fussed about that. I don't mind it being a little bit of the paper showing through. So again, a really, really simple background. Dry it with the heat gun and it'll only take a few minutes and you're ready to go and move on. Okay, that's a really simple one with ink or paint smooshing. See you for the next one. So moving down the list, we come to number 4, ink blending. It's a very simple technique using any water-based inks. Distress inks are particularly good because they are designed to be slow drying, thus can be moved around the page a bit more. Just be aware that some other inks that you use, they may be water-based, but they may not blend as well or be as moved around the page as well. The idea of them being blendable is you can avoid harsh edges, which is what you want to do with ink blending. So you just need a few colours. I've chosen a few bright colours here. If I cross them over each other, the blue and pink would be okay, but the green and the pink would make a pretty awful colour. So we don't really want to blend them over each other. I've also got 3 blending tools. I have my blending tools by colour groups. You don't have to do that. You can have one blending tool and just change your foams, which are using Velcros. Change your foams as needed. So another quite simple one. We don't try and think about it too much. We just start ink blending. The trick with the ink blending is to don't overload your foam and keep it moving, and don't press too hard initially, and make sure you're moving your hand before you place it on the page. So we want to try and avoid sharp edges. We can put a little ink on and make a softer colour, or we can really jazz it up by adding more ink. It took me quite a few actually took me nearly 2 years to ink blend properly. I wasn't getting very nice effect. It was very patchy. It was I had straight lines everywhere. But things to avoid when you're starting is don't overload your foam. Use a light touch to start with. And keep your foam pad moving. So you can use any sorts of colours. You can use 2 colours, or you can use 3 colours. Colours that work together, you can cross them over. So if I crossed over this blue with the pink, I would get a lovely little shade of purple. As you can see, I'm doing a little bit there. So you can see I'm tapping the ink pad regularly, not hard, just every now and then. I try not to think about it too much where I'm putting my colours, but I'm just trying to break it up so the colours aren't all in a row. I'm just adding a little bit of the blue over the pink to get a slight shade of purple. As you can see on the small page, it's working quite quickly. Now that I'm using the green, I know that putting the green over the pink will give me a really interesting shade of brown, so I'm trying to avoid doing that. You can see I'm now just using the edge of the blender to go between the two colours. I can put it over the blue and get an interesting shade of green blue. Got a few splatters there from the orange one I did earlier. That kind of thing doesn't worry me. I find that art journaling can be messy, but that appeals to me. So a quick and easy page. I've got a few lines here that could be worked over, particularly this one here. It's not very appealing to me, so I'm actually going to put a little darker pink. So you can do another layer and darken up certain parts of your colours. You can keep them really soft. That's the good thing about the distress inks. You can layer them up over themselves to get a darker colour. So again, really simple, quick and easy page. Now, to get another little effect that I particularly like, you need a little paper towel and you need your spritzy bottle. So again, I'm spritzing lightly. I don't want a misty spray, I want a blotchy spray. You can see I'm already getting some lovely effects of the water reacting with the dye. These are a dye-based ink. They were specifically designed to react with water and to dry slowly. Got my good old paper towel, and just after about 30 seconds or so, one simple roll, picking up the excess. I've got a nice splotchy colour, didn't take too long. Because the paper was not wet, it's not going to take too long to dry. So here we are, ink blending. Leave it plain, or you can splosh on your water and mop it off, dry it with your heat gun, and away you go. See you for the next one. So the last one on the list today was the paint scrape. Now there's a few different ways you can do this. You can actually line all your paints up, put them all across the top of the page and scrape it down, or you can just randomly put them across the page and scrape as you go, which is the method I prefer. So you do need a few paints. You can use any type of acrylic paints, whether they come in a bottle or a tube. That doesn't really matter. I just use an old credit cardy thing. You can use a paint scraper, and I've got a very dark colour here. I'll show you what I'm going to do with that at the end. So these are Dina Wakeler Media acrylic paints. I like the little bottles. I find them really handy. I particularly like the little squirty nozzles. They really appeal to me. So as you can see, I'm just putting a few little paint blobs on my page, and I'm just going to start scraping them about. This is a lovely colour. So you do have a little control of where they go. Again, I don't try and think about it too much. I've chosen 3 colours that would work well together. You don't have to place your bits, your 3 little blobs or 4 little blobs or whatever you want to do all at once. You can do them bit by bit. I quite like the patchy effect. I also quite like the idea of letting some of the paper show through. These colours I particularly like. I try to get colours that work well together rather than colours that are going to make mud. You can add colours that don't necessarily go that will make mud, but you have to dry them in between. So I'm keeping mine a little bit linear, trying to move it around the page and have, I don't really want to fill the whole page. So what I can do when I'm finished is I go, okay, I'd like a little bit more of this colour. So I might put a little squirt of it there. So you can do a little quick analysing of your page when you think you're finished, and just add more colour where you like it. I would like a little more of this turquoise in spots. These colours I think will work okay together. I don't think there will be too much trouble if they mix. You can do big fell swoops. So if I wanted to do this all in one swoop, I would dot my colours intermittently across the top of the page. I would get my card on the broad side and I would do one huge swipe, and again and again, and then I would not touch it. Reason being, I would not want all my colours to mix up and blend. So again, super simple, really easy page, but I do like to add a little dark or light highlight. This colour is Night. It's a super dark blue. It looks black, but it's not actually black. I want a little on my craft sheet because I particularly like this effect. I'm running the edge of my card through the paint, and I'm using it to paint a few lines. You can use the corner and drag it through as well, but I just want to make a few little broken lines here and there. I don't want them perfectly even or straight. I'm going to use the corner as well, just to do a few little dots. I think this is quite a nice effect. Adds a little highlight, breaks up the page. It's just a little bit more enjoyable to the eye. So I'm going to just use up the rest of the paint with the corner, filling in some of these gaps with some little dots. Again, a super easy page to get you started, and there it is, all done in a few minutes. Super easy page, not too thick paint. Some of these black lines are a little thicker. Again, dry it with the heat gun. These are nice quality paints. You can use any type of acrylic paint in a tube, in a tub, in a bottle, whatever you like. Scrape it around. Sometimes less is more. I don't put huge amounts of paint on to start with. I tend to build it up. So start with a little, and then if you want more, you can put it in later. So a super duper easy page. I'll dry these pages off and then I'll give you a close-up and we'll finish from there. See you soon. So here is a quick look at and a close-up of the 5 simple pages we did today. The first was the torn paper collage. I've dried all these up with the heat gun, so they're looking quite good. The second one we did was the ink spraying. You can see I've got a really beautiful motley effect on this. I really quite like it. I like the little bit of brighter paper showing through as well. This was the ink or paint smooshing, where we put the ink pad onto the piece of acrylic or plastic. Again, another really effective, very vivid background, only because of the colour of the ink. Again, this one, because it is some of the ink is water-based, you could splotch it with water and wipe the water splotches off. This was the ink blending. Using the tool, you can see up in the corner here I've got a bit of ink from the other page. That doesn't worry me. I could easily stamp over that or collage over that. Remember, backgrounds don't have to be perfect. They're just a background. They're just a start. And if you do it and you really hate it, give it a coat of black gesso, and away you go again. So again, this was the ink blending with the water splotches, and the last one was the paint scraping. I think this is a particularly nice page. I like the broken look. I like the paper showing through. Anyway, that was 5 really simple, quick backgrounds just to get you started. Keep an eye out because I'll be doing a few more of these. Some of the backgrounds will be more involved, and others will be really, really simple. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again.